Alright, let's roll some damn dice. You're listening to the Critical Cast. I'm RuneSlinger87. We talk games, stories, and the kind of chaos that keeps the doors swinging. Let's get into it. So, episode 1, what do I want to talk about? I think that it's important to kind of start where uh, most of us as DMs kind of face right away. If you're thinking about it, it's probably something that you thought of or fear, and that's going to be uh, the fear at the table that you have your plan, that you have everything all set, and you're good to go, and you have an answer to everything. That is going to be what most DMs fear, or the people that are trying to get into DMing but are a little afraid or overwhelmed by the fact that they don't have every single thing accounted for or that they don't feel that they do. I'm here to tell you that is a myth. Quit doing that to yourself. Quit thinking about it. You're overthinking the process. I don't blame you though. I know that. I've done it. Um, I've been running a campaign. Let's talk my credentials real quick to be an authority on this matter. Um, I've been DMing probably about 15 years, and I've been playing for maybe 17 years. So a good portion of my life I have spent playing Dungeons and Dragons. I started off at 3.5. It is more or less my favorite. I would say that that has recently got overtaken by fifth edition. But fifth edition is much simpler in my mind, but 3.5 is more complicated, but there's a lot more freedom to it. So that's why I personally think 3.5 is really fun, but as a person who's a parent, as a person who's an employee and an employer, um, I have to be very cautious with my time. Oh, and I'm going to school. How can I forget about that? So between all those things, fifth edition seems to be a lot simpler and a lot less work on me as a DM. But I digress. Let's go ahead and get back to the topic at hand. That being, what do you do to prepare as a dungeon master? Well, simply put, what a lot of people fear is not being prepared, not having all the answers, not knowing all the situations that can take place. Uh, when I ran for my first time as a DM, I had a friend who was amazing at the rules. At the time, we didn't know that he was on the spectrum. It makes sense now, just because of some of the interactions and the conversations that we would have, that was the case. But in any case, with him, he knew the rules and he knew uh, everything like the back of his hand. Any rule, anything in question, he was the guy that you would speak to. And for a long time, he was the one who hosted our campaigns because of that fact. But he wanted to go ahead and give it a shot with just being a player. And I wanted the opposite. I wanted to learn all the rules. I wanted to be prepared. So I spent probably a good 20 hours drawing up my world, uh, the backstories, all the characters. It was a lot of work, a lot of work, and it all got derailed in 2 minutes. And that was quite simply because I tried to plan for everything. As a DM, it's important to have bullet points, but you have to understand you're telling a story with players that are also telling the story. You, as a dungeon master, you're giving the setting, you're giving a few plots, but the plot is going to build itself as the game progresses. So it's not really important to know how every single thing in your campaign is going to work. It's important for you to know the rules, the mechanics, uh, the rules that you set within your world. Because as the DM, it even says in the book, you have complete control to be able to deviate from the rules. And sometimes that is needed to happen in your campaign to make it run as a successful campaign. Personally, I like being able to have that freedom and being able to go ahead and create situations as well as solve situations. Now, how my campaign got derailed in less than 2 minutes with about 40 plus hours at the end of the week worth of time that I have spent getting my campaign ready to go. Um, I had a level 3 character, which is what we all started out at, go in and cast a fireball. At this point, there wasn't cantrips because we were running 3.5. It may have even been level 1. Truthfully, I forget. But they cast fireball in a wheat field as their first action within the game. And they burnt down the entire town because I didn't have that situation in my rule book as something that I would be able to prepare. And that was the first lesson in being a DM for me that has been paramount. I have stood true and fast next to the idea of you can create plots, but you don't want to think that your players are going to make a certain decision because right when they are making that decision, that's when you're going to find out the creativity level of your players. Now, this person that I'm speaking of in my campaign didn't necessarily mean to, derail my campaign, but I also should have taken into account this is a person that really truly enjoys shenanigans. So at that point, the town burnt down, and I didn't really have a great answer for to go ahead and combat that. And at that point, all my quests and everything for my new group is kind of destroyed with that. So what I should have done would be something to the effect of having a group of druids, for instance, see that they had caught fire to their field, and this could have angered them for any reason other than, you know, you don't want a railroad, but at the same time, it makes sense. Druids cherish nature, so when they see a character just burning things down just to burn it in nature, um, druids would go ahead and stop that. And then at that point, you can use a spell like create water. I could have put out the flames that way. But at that point in time, because I was so focused on creating characters and the story and doing the quests, I took it upon myself to try to assume what my players would do. And one of the reasons why I don't think that works at all is because I take things at a way different approach than what this friend had done. He very much growing up was a structured person. Everything had a plan, everything had a backup plan. There was a plan for a plan, and as he would say it, he had a contingency plan for his contingency plans. And that was just the way how he grew up, and we all understood that about each other, and we understood that about him. Well, oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes, people like to play a character that is opposite to what they would play as. Now, he loved playing chaotic characters. In fact, alignment, you can bet, was always chaotic evil. If it was um, good or uh, lawful evil, eventually it would turn into chaotic. And that was just that's the charm of having different players. Bigger groups are nice, but then the game runs a little bit slow, and you have a 3 hour session whether or not a door should open or not. And that's not an exaggeration. That actually happened to me too. That wasn't me. That wasn't my campaign, actually. As I'm thinking about it, I was a player, but yeah, that's what happens when you try to go ahead and plot what your characters are going to be doing. You have a longer list of players. Yeah, the more players you have, the more it's going to take time for each combat and interaction. Uh, so I don't know. For us, our magic number was 6. For some, that's too many. For others, that's too small of a group. It just depends on everybody's mood and what they're looking to go ahead and get out of the game. Uh, but what I took away from my town burning down and essentially my game being over for the day um, was that I need to worry less about what my players are going to do and understand that what I can go ahead and do in response to what they do. That's what being a DM is. I learned that if you're going to force your players and railroad and make the decisions for them what they're going to do, you might as well stop playing D&D. What you really want to be doing at that point is write a book. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like writing. But I keep my writing out of DM. Um, it is easier for me to come up with a couple of plots and a few different uh, cliffhangers and a few different uh, side quests, how my characters are going to go ahead and play. All that really greatly depends on what I want the story to be like. Whether I'm going to play a good campaign or I'm going to play an evil campaign, I don't really start making my campaign until I get together the group and I ask them, do you want to play good or evil? A lot of DMs I find will tell people if they're going to host a good or evil campaign and what their restrictions are. What I My approach is I ask them if they want to play good or evil. Okay, great. We want to play good. What kind of class and race are you looking for to play in your game? Okay, then once I get that information, that's when I start building my restrictions. That's when I start saying, well, I'm going to allow these mechanics, but I'm not going to allow these mechanics. And usually I don't say whether or not I'm going to allow a mechanic until the player has had time to reach out to me to give me a backstory, to let me know what their goals are, because I want to build my story around what they want. This may be me narrating and telling the story, but ultimately it's our story that we're creating together. Now, I have enjoyed my group so much. My longest campaign was 5 years. My shortest campaign, I want to say, was about, oh, probably 2 years, maybe a little less than that. Now, the way how my group works is when we were younger and in high school, we would play every weekend, like every weekend without fail. Then, when we became adults and we had responsibilities, kids, kind of became once a month kind of thing. So take my timeline into consideration that you may or may not have more time than I, and that's okay. If you guys can get together, once a week, great. Um, Once you go ahead and establish your story and the plot and how that is going to progress, the rest coming up with campaigns is a response to how the session prior ended. As a DM, I've also found it really helpful to go ahead and uh, work my storytelling in the opposite side. And what I mean by that is we were playing a good campaign, so in my mind, I am writing the story for the evil side of the world and what's going on there, because I didn't want it to feel like, okay, we finished Act One, now we're going into Act Two, and Act Two at that point needs to catch up to Act One in things like the governments, the towns, the society, the way how uh, their leadership is ran. All that, I wanted that to feel organic so that in case if my players happen to stumble upon a town that I wasn't expecting them to, I wasn't having to struggle coming up with ideas on the fly. I had an idea, but I didn't know exactly what was going on. And my details came from reactions to my players, not me planning ahead of time what my players were going to do. That's kind of that's a big lesson that I learned with that town. Um, Fortunately, it didn't ruin my game. But what it did do is it gave me an opportunity to learn new lessons and um, the way how my group was going to work from a uh, DM standpoint. When it comes to those types of lessons, it's important to have a group that understands that this is going to be something that's new to you as much as it's going to be new to them. They may have played D&D for many years, they may know all the rules, but they don't know the game that you're going to run, right? So because they don't know the game that you're going to run, they can anticipate certain things, but you don't want them to necessarily fall into the same trap of trying to go ahead and prepare for everything. The most fun a player is going to have is when they're just not thinking about it and they're just doing, meaning that they're reacting, and that's how, in my mind, the game works the best. Is the DM goes ahead and starts the plot, right? They start the world. They're giving the scenarios, the situations, all that kind of stuff. Now the players are taking that information and working with it, right? Then once they go ahead and start doing that, the DM at that point gives a problem or gives an obstacle that the players are going to have to choose to overcome. And they're either going to work on that problem, they're going to forego that problem altogether, um, or they're going to try to overcome the obstacle. Um, and there's many subcategories within that statement, right? So it can be any number of options and choices. So if you and your players are trying to anticipate what each other's doing, I'm sure that's possible, and people can do it, but I don't know. That just doesn't seem to be a fun interaction with just trying to figure out what my players are going to go ahead and do next. I like to kind of come up with ideas so that I have a loose form, uh, one size fits all kind of atmosphere, right? Like, I just don't want that to be dictated. Now, the other thing when it comes to running a campaign that gets a lot of players in a position where they don't even launch the title is that they are constantly worried that um, their story isn't getting told. And if their story isn't getting told, they'll do what's called railroading. This is something as a DM you don't want to do because it's not fun to your players, and if it's not fun to your players, it's not going to be fun to you. Let whatever happens happen. If players are wanting to do shenanigans, let them burn that field. Let them burn that field. Go ahead, and in my case, have the druids come and let there be a trial. Let that be part of the uh, consequences that lead up. And sometimes a death may incur because of their decisions, but that's not something that you want to tell them, hey, because you did this, this is what had happened. It's not that. Let them figure that organically out on their own and let them go ahead and figure out a way out of it. If they die, my recommendation would be try to give a way back. You know, start a quest, start something that allows a resurrection. And a resurrection is a very powerful spell. It's a very powerful artifact to go ahead and have that type of magic within game. So make sure that you, at that point, are also coming up with plans and strategies how to go ahead and fit it all together. Well, guys, that's episode 1. I appreciate feedback, likes, subscribes. Let's go ahead and put the dice down. Spells are spent. I'm out. This was the Critical Cast. Tune in next time if the world doesn't end first.